Hey, happy Monday. Are you excited it's Monday? It's not much different from the last couple of Mondays, but at least it's Monday. Um, we have the Bermuda Triangle to read, and then I will talk to you a little bit about an announcement I'm going to make. But I think we should be finishing the Bermuda Triangle today. So then we'll have to do another vote on what the next book will be. Okay, so I told you we left off with chapter 6, so that's where we're going to start, The Librarian Detective. In the early 1970s, a librarian named Larry Koosh decided to solve the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. His interest was sparked after people kept calling or visiting the library wanting to learn about the triangle. Larry decided to do some research himself. Was something mysterious going on? First, he made a list of every book and article written on the subject. Then he got in touch with the U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Air Force, and an insurance company called Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's insured ships, so it was often involved whenever a ship was lost at sea. Larry also read dozens of newspaper reports. He even went back to newspapers printed in 1840. Little by little, he began to find facts that explained away the mysteries in Bermuda Triangle disappearances. So this is him, that's Larry. This is Lloyd's of London, which is like a place in London that insures boats, and this is him working. Okay. For one thing, it turned out that in many cases, the facts had not been reported correctly. Sometimes newspapers would say the ship sank in good weather, but in truth, there had been a storm offshore. Larry knew this because he would check out local weather reports from the day of disappearance. Sometimes boats were said to be lost in the Bermuda Triangle when they really sank 1,000 miles away. One by one, the truth about some of the mysteries came out. Flight 19 had seemed so mysterious at first. How could 5 planes disappear all at once? But the Navy had investigated and found a different story. They talked to all the people who had spoken to the pilots that day. Most of them were airport tower radio operators, but one was a pilot named Lieutenant Robert Cox. Cox explained that he was flying near southern Florida that day when he heard some radio messages coming through. The voice said, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." It was the voice of the Flight 19 leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor. With neither of his compasses working, Taylor wasn't sure which way to go. Worse, he wasn't sure where he was. He thought he was flying over some island south of Florida called the Florida Keys, but Taylor was new to the Florida area. He wasn't as familiar with those islands or the Bahamas as someone else might have been. Here's a picture of Robert Cox. And then this is a picture of Captain Taylor. Cox tried to help. He told Taylor, "Put the sun on your port wing." That means for Taylor to make sure the sun was on his left side. Since it was afternoon, the sun was in the west. With the sun on his left, Taylor would be flying north, up the coast of Florida. He should find Fort Lauderdale easily. Cox also offered to fly south to meet Taylor and the other planes. "I know where I am now," Taylor said. "Don't come after me." But did he know, or was he still confused? For the rest of the afternoon, the radio messages from Taylor and the other pilots faded in and out. Sometimes the airport towers could hear Taylor. Here's the Florida Keys. And here's the flight towers talking. Sometimes they could hear him, sometimes not. They asked him to switch to a different radio channel, one that would come in better, but Taylor refused. He was afraid that if he changed to another channel, he would lose contact with the young pilots in the other planes. Over the next few hours, a lot of weak radio messages were heard. Some of the pilots had working compasses. They thought they should fly west to reach land, but they weren't in charge. They were being trained. Lieutenant Taylor was giving the orders and he kept changing his mind. He told them to fly east, then west, then east again. "If we would just fly west, we would get home," 2 different pilots said. They had been flying a long time, too long. They were running out of gas. If they didn't find land soon, they'd have to ditch. That meant land in the water. Finally, the lieutenant made a terrible decision. He told the other pilots, When the first man gets down to 10 gallons of gas, we will all land in the water together. Does everyone understand that? Here's a picture of one of the pilots. The planes remained lost for more than 4 hours. As evening fell, the weather turned windy, and in the end, they ran out of gas. Flying over the ocean, they simply never spotted land. What happened to them wasn't a mystery, it was a tragedy. It wasn't some strange, powerful force in the Bermuda Triangle that sucked them into the ocean. It was a combination of unlucky events. The broken compasses, the bad radio signals, and the decisions made by Lieutenant Taylor. What about the rescue plane that went out to find them? How could it vanish so quickly? The answer was pretty simple. An explosion was seen in the sky about 20 minutes after the rescue plane took off. The rescue plane was a Martin Mariner. Some people called them flying gas tanks because they carried a large amount of fuel and were often filled with gas fumes. Fires could start easily. Another Martin Mariner exploded the same way in 1956. Most likely, both Mariners blew up when a spark of some kind lit the gas fumes. But could all the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle be explained so easily? Here's that plane blowing up. Chapter 7, Mystery Solved. When Larry Kusch did more research, he found out that many more of the Bermuda Triangle mysteries were not so hard to explain. The disappearance of the Atalanta, the British ship with hundreds of young cadets on board, was no mystery at all. By reading the London Times from 1880, Larry Kusch was able to find out the truth. There had been heavy, violent storms in the Atlantic Ocean that lasted for almost a month. Other ships were lost at sea during the same time. Bad weather and rough seas are not magical forces that suck ships into the Bermuda Triangle. They are a constant danger at sea. Storms are often the cause of ships and planes going down all over the world. Bad weather might also have been to blame for the loss of the Cyclops. Larry Kusch found a weather report that other people had overlooked. It said there was a huge storm near Norfolk, Virginia, around the same time that the Cyclops was lost. The winds blew at 60 miles per hour. So this is the newspaper clipping that he read of the Atalanta. And this is, who is this? This is George Worley, captain of the Cyclops. Or there could have been another reason for the disappearance of the Cyclops. It was a Navy ship and it vanished during World War I. America was at war with Germany, and guess what? The captain of the Cyclops was German. Some people thought the captain might have turned the ship over to the Germans to help them in the war. 21 years later, another war broke out again with Germany. It was called World War II. And again, 2 more Navy ships, just like the Cyclops, disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle in 1941. Was it a mysterious force at work? No. Both ships were probably sunk by the Germans who were trying to destroy enemy ships in the Atlantic. Here's a picture of like the war time stuff. And what about Joshua Slocum, the world's best sailor who had sailed around the world? There are lots of guesses about what happened to him. There might have been an accident. For example, his boat might have been destroyed by a huge steamship in the night, or he might have had a heart attack and died. With no one to control the sails, the boat could have capsized, which means to flip over, and sunk. Or he might have been lost in a terrible storm. Even great sailors make costly mistakes. And furthermore, no one knows for sure where his ship went down. Slocum set sail from Martha's Vineyard, which is off the coast of Massachusetts. Sure, he was heading toward the Bermuda Triangle, but maybe his boat sank while he was still many miles away. Blaming his disappearance on the Bermuda Triangle doesn't make sense when there are so many other possibilities. This is showing a big, gigantic ship that could have possibly hit his smaller ship. And this is a map that's showing that it could have happened anywhere else along the way to the Bermuda Triangle. Another mystery that's easy to solve is the case of the Rubicon, the ship that was found drifting with only a dog on board. Was the captain snatched away by aliens from outer space? No. As a newspaper report explained, a hurricane came up and the rope that held the Rubicon to the dock was broken. Strong winds probably tore the ship loose and set it drifting. The captain and crew had likely gone ashore before the hurricane hit. Bad weather is common in the Bermuda Triangle. Not only can storms come up suddenly, but the Atlantic Ocean also has its own hurricane season in the summer and fall. Many of these hurricanes never reach land. Here's a picture of how the Rubicon maybe got broken away from its moorings, and that's a hurricane out at sea. Hurricanes. A hurricane is a huge, strong storm that rotates or spins in a spiral shape. To be called a hurricane, the winds must be at least 74 miles per hour. Hurricanes form over the ocean and then sometimes move inland. Strong winds and high waves usually follow. In other parts of the world, the same kind of storm has a different name. In Japan, they are called typhoons. In the South Pacific, they're cyclones. Waterspouts and methane gas are two more forces of nature that can sink ships and boats. Waterspouts are huge columns of water. They shoot up from the ocean like a tornado of spinning water that's being sucked into a cloud. Huge methane gas bubbles can also shoot up from the bottom of the sea. One theory goes that the bubbles are so big they can sink boats or ships, although there's no proof that this has ever happened. Here's a picture of a water spout. So it kind of looks like a tornado of water, I guess. Yeah? Airplanes can get into trouble in bad weather too, but more often an airplane crashes for different reasons. The Star Tiger, which vanished in 1948, had a number of problems. There were things wrong with the plane's mechanical parts, things that hadn't been fixed. Also, the plane was filled with so much fuel, it was actually overweight, a little too heavy. And the plane was flying at a very low altitude, only about 2,000 feet above the earth. Normally, a plane that size would fly as high as 20,000 feet. It's harder for a pilot to control a plane that's flying so low. If a mistake is made, there isn't much room to correct the problem before crashing. No one knows for sure what happened to the Star Tiger, but after its sister plane, the Star Ariel, disappeared the next year, the British airline company stopped using those planes for passenger flights. The airline seemed to believe that kind of plane was no longer safe, no matter where it flew. How about the disappearance of the DC-3 plane bringing families home from Christmas vacation? Yes, the weather was clear, but the plane had weak batteries, so the radio signals were not strong. The pilot lost touch with the control tower. Winds might have blown the pilot off course, and the pilot and co-pilot had been flying for 20 hours that day. They could have been tired. There are more likely explanations for why the plane went down, not a spooky force in the Bermuda Triangle. The two military planes that disappeared in 1963 are not a mystery at all. When the Air Force investigated, they found proof that the two planes had collided. They had run into each other in midair. And what about the flying boxcar that disappeared in 1965? Did a UFO grab that plane out of the sky? Not likely. The more logical explanation is that one of the plane's two engines died. With only one engine, the pilot would have had a very hard time keeping the plane in the air. This is showing the two planes that collided, which caused them to crash. One thing, however, remains true about flying through the Bermuda Triangle. The skies can be very hazy and strange at times. One pilot named George Smith reported his experiences. George explained how easy it is to get confused. He said that sometimes the ocean and the sky blended together so much he didn't know which was which. Sometimes he didn't know whether his plane was upside down or right side up. He couldn't trust his eyeballs. When that happens, George said, a pilot can be heading toward the water in a spiral and not even realize it. Pilots can crash into the ocean without ever sending out an SOS. The same thing can happen at night too. Sometimes if it's hazy, the stars look like the lights on the ground. Pilots don't know which way is up. But not every mystery in the Bermuda Triangle can be explained so easily. Some mysteries are still unsolved even today. Okay, we have one more chapter to finish, so we'll finish that next time. And then there's like a big map to show. So we'll finish that next time. I thought we would finish today, but it's a little bit too long. But I do want us to vote on what we will read after this. So here's the options. We can read about, let me find it. we can read about Mr. Rogers, or we can read about Walt Disney. Who was Walt Disney? We're going to end up reading these for sure, just because I want you to know I want to read them at some point. So one of those, or we can go back to Titanic and read I Survived, which is I Survived the Sinking of the Titanic. That would be the one that I would want to read out of this collection, even though it has 3 others that sound interesting too. So I'll put that on Seesaw, and you guys will vote on it. So either I Survived the Sinking of the Titanic, or who was Walt Disney, or who was Mr. Rogers. So that'll be the next one. And I guess that's it for today. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that there's going to be an announcement that I'm going to put on Seesaw, and I'm going to send it out to your parents so they'll know as well. So look for that. Kind of excited about it. And I think that's all I have for you today. Khaleesi's here, but she's on the ground. I think she's upset with me. I'm not sure. She looks a little grumpy. So I'm just going to let her lay on the ground, and I'll show you her next time in a video. Okay, that's it. If you want to talk or anything, you know how to email me or message me on Seesaw anytime you want. Okay, I miss you all. See you later.